I'm Renee Ballard, a design strategist and the host of Let's Talk Design, a podcast dedicated to exploring all the facets of the business of design. On today's episode of Let's Talk Design, we're talking about 2025 design trends. So I know it's a bold move to predict the future, and maybe it is, but it's only kind of a bold move if anyone checks. Rarely people circle back to a year later, and have a look and see if it was true or not. But anyways, hand on heart, this is my most sciencey prediction I can make through anecdotal experience and observing what's going on around us. Typically with design trends, especially, in 3D interior and architectural designs, we normally talk about color trends, materials, finishes, that kind of area of what's popular and what's not. And then with retail and commercial design, particularly retail, normally circles back to trends in sustainability with materials, customer experience, elevation, and engagement. Retail doesn't really do color trends so much, especially with the big brands, because if a brand's color is purple, they're never going to get into the sage green trend. It's just not going to happen. And speaking of retail, my prediction is there's going to be a split in retail. We're going to see store design that's driven by AI, and we're going to see store design that isn't. So I have to admit, when AI first came on the scene in a commercial way with easy accessibility to using it, I didn't like it at all. I thought it was cheating, and I thought it was a bit down and dirty, and it felt a bit backhanded, especially, and I still stand by this, the writing stuff doesn't really bang my gong. I barely have enough attention span to read something a human with a brain wrote. The idea of reading a well-intentioned algorithm's regurgitation of what's cool right now just repels me. But that said, we're renovating our house right now, and we needed to renovate we've got to do the bathrooms. And for whatever reason, picking tiles puts me in an absolute tizzy whiz because, I don't know, it's something to do with the science and the math and getting the grids right and the lines and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, and so we can render it and we can have a look at it that way, which is much more time consuming. I cracked open some AI software, purchased the package, and took it for a spin. Game changer. I had to eat my words. I've got to eat humble pie. I understand now where everyone's coming from. Just the speed with which it can spit stuff out. That said, it's only as strong as the person that writes the code. So particularly, I noticed with the product we were using with residential, it was spitting out American style hardware in the bathroom. I always find American hardware, like tapware and things, it's very heavy set. It's a lot more solid than perhaps what we're used to in Australia or what trends down here. Still though, really great. And I could understand now why it's as popular as it is. And I think the reason I had been reticent is, like I said, I thought it was cheating. And now I can see it's just a tool, because one caveat with AI is it can't, well, as far as I can tell, you can't get documentation out of it. You can't build direct from AI. It's still got to go through the process. So it really is just like a tool, like Photoshop or Illustrator, which I'm sure, that was looked down upon as well back in the day when that came on the scene. Putting my AI stuff aside and my breakthrough with AI aside and back to retail design, just over the past 2 years, I've noticed that Australian retail has leveled up. It's a lot more sophisticated. The silhouettes are more striking, a lot more curves, curved glass. I haven't seen curved glass, I wasn't around in the 1940s, but I've certainly, seen stores and residential as well that used to use curved glass, and that's now back to being produced, which is amazing, and, spect. So we live in Paddington, and Paddington's in Sydney. It's a gorgeous little, bubble, little village. But as I was walking around last year, as I was walking around, I'm noticing that it took me a second longer to ascertain what store was what, because all of a sudden I couldn't work out, is it a lawyer? Is that a law firm? Is it a chiropractor? Is it a tap shop? Do they sell cupcakes? Because they've all got the same beautiful sheer curtains. They've all got the same monochromatic Zalige tile in shades of terracotta. They've all got beautiful brass finish detail, unvarnished brass, naturally. They're not animals. And the same brass sign lettering as well, the same 3D brass sign lettering. And I couldn't work it out. I'm like, why are all, I understand a trend, but this was, it just felt a bit odd. But then when I started using AI, I could see what I was seeing in the streets was being spat out at me as well via AI software. So it makes sense because AI is written by an algorithm that, or is driven by an algorithm that combs and scours the internet for the most popular likes of posts. And of course, we're all putting interior design posts up. And then so the internet's it's sipping, from this cup of everything that we're pouring into it. And this isn't, this is just an evolution of something we talked about years ago, is since the advent of the internet and social media feeds, as designers internationally, we're all sipping from the same source. So we're all going to Pinterest, we're all going to Instagram, TikTok. And whereas, 50 years ago, pre-internet, think about comparing Spanish design to Swedish design. Whereas now you'll find the same interior designs across lots of countries and cultures around the world. So I don't think, cross-culture trends are anything bad. It's just that everything starts to look a bit homogenized, a bit samey. AI is just trying to do its job. It's trying to give us what it thinks that we want over and over and over again. And it's a little bit like it's sitting in its own bathwater, unfortunately, because it only has about 50 years to draw from. And when we think of, design history, it's thousands of years old and obviously predates the internet. And there are lots of books on the topic, not all the books, but, there's a lot more books that capture vast ranges of different architectural styles, trends, and cultures. And, when the internet was invented, all the books just didn't get uploaded. So we've really only got the past 50 years of digital uploads that exist on the internet. So AI is unfortunately missing a huge swath of resource that has gone before us. So it makes sense why everything's starting to become really homogenized. Like what I was using with AI, I could only really feed up a few different strains. Granted, I didn't take it for a huge spin of like letting it learn my vernacular or really it getting to know me and the way I was talking and things. But I could understand those limitations and I can see it in the outputs in the interiors of stores that are using it. Back to my prediction. I predict that retail design is going to go down two paths. We're going to see option one, which will be stores that are using AI to style their design direction. And I think they're going to be maybe smaller brands. Maybe they don't have internal marketing teams. Maybe they don't need a really strong value, like brand aesthetic that adheres to their brand values. And then I think there'll be option two, which will be big brands and or ones that have internal marketing teams or ones that have a really strong brand aesthetic and need to stay relevant to their target audience. I think they will zig to the zag and they're not going to be, I don't think they'll be using any fluted panels or arches anytime soon. So there we have it. My 2025 prediction is we're going to see who's on the AI machine and who is sticking to their roots. Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Design. Please feel free to subscribe to be the first to know when our next episode is available.